Well, hello one last time. This will be the very last video of the year, since mostly this week what you're going to do is take your last test. The test is now available and you can email me when you're ready to take it. I'll send you the link for it. In addition to test 4, what you're going to have to do is turn in a summary for your project. And I wanted to give you an idea of exactly what you need to do with that this week. Basically, what you're going to do is write a very short summary that answers a few specific questions. You do need to tell me what was the question that you were trying to find out, how did you go about gathering your data, what was that data, and in the process of that, you want to tell me the specific numbers, and there also is a requirement that you make some sort of a graph as part of your project. I want to know what hypothesis tests you performed, what was the level of significance that you used, or the critical value if you did an R-test, and what was the p-value or the calculated value for R that you came up with when you did your hypothesis test. You should let me know whether your result was significant, and give me an idea of what that means. And finally, answer the question, were there any other issues or problems that you had in completing the project? Your overall summary will just be a short written summary that's typically 1 or 2 paragraphs that answers the questions that I just had. To give you an idea of how that works, I'm going to try and show you some things that are both good and bad based on some projects that I've had people do in the past. The first one I'm going to talk about is actually one of the lamest projects I've ever had, but the summary I'm going to show you is actually quite good. The project was trying to answer the question, are dice fair? And the guy who did this project took a die, rolled it 300 times, and recorded what number it landed on. You actually did a variation on this on one of your quizzes a couple weeks ago, but you can see it landed on 141 times and 268 times, and so forth through the rest of these. Here's a graph that shows you how many times it landed on each of the different numbers. You can see it landed on 2 more often than anything else, but 1 was a little bit less common than the other numbers. To test this, the guy that did the project did a categorical or GOF chi-square test. He figured out that there were 5 degrees of freedom, and that was true because there were 6 categories, 6 numbers on the side of dice. He chose a 10% level of significance because working with dice just wasn't a real important thing to research, and also determined that the expected number for each of the dice should be 50 because when he rolled it 300 times, there's 6 sides of the dice. You divide that, you'd get 50 each time if it just all happened randomly. When he calculated things, he got a p-value of 0.09413. And since that was less than the level of significance that he had chosen, 10%, then yes, this is a significant result, which means that his die could have some problems. Now, he also noted that if he'd chosen some other levels of significance, it wouldn't have been significant, but at 10%, yeah, it is. The biggest issue this person had is that he was originally trying to do a completely different project, but things just didn't come together with that one. And when he did do the dice project, the die kept falling off the table when he did it, and that caused some issues with marking everything down. Now, I told you clear back at the beginning of class that my expectation for the project was that as long as you did what you were supposed to, you were going to get an A on the project. What I typically do when I look at somebody's final summary is I go through and I make sure that they've addressed all the different things that I said. This guy said that he wanted to find out whether dice were fair, and he did that by rolling a die 300 times. He showed me exactly how many times it landed on each of the numbers and made a very good graph that recorded that information. He did a categorical chi-square test, told me the level of significance was 10%, calculated a p-value, said that yes, this was significant, and said that might mean the die wasn't totally fair. And finally, he told me all the different issues that came up when he was doing it. So, while the project itself may not have been anything special, everything that this guy did was fine in terms of fulfilling the requirements of the project, and he ended up getting an A on it. I'm also going to talk about another project that I had someone do, and I'm going to tell you that the person that actually did this project did a really good job. But I'm going to present it in a different way than she did and show you how sometimes people screw up when they do their project summaries. So this project was about the question of, are people living longer than they used to? And the woman that did this project did it by looking at a whole bunch of tombstones in a cemetery over in Wesley, Iowa, and she found out how old people were when they died and the year that person died, recorded that information for 100 different tombstones. And she tried to make sure that she included people that had died both before and after World War II. So far all of this is perfectly fine. We know what she's trying to find out. We know how she gathered the data, and that's good. And here's a graph that would show what she got. She did two tests, a two-sample t-test and a correlation r-test. And it says here the two-sample t-test was significant. It showed the average age of dead people before World War II was less than after World War II. For the correlation r-test, the table value was 0.37. The calculator said 0.31, so it was significant too. And we got a conclusion here. People really are living longer than they used to. The end. Now again, this isn't really the summary that the person that did this project had, but if it had been, there would have been a lot of issues with it, and I want to point out what exactly is not right on this. The first thing that really isn't very good is that the graph had no labels. Not only was the title, "This is a graph," which is just stupid, but it also doesn't say what the X and Y axis stand for, which probably are the year at death and how old they were when they died. But it doesn't tell us that. I'm just guessing that that would be what we're looking at. It also didn't give me any specific data, either with the graph or anywhere along here. There was nothing that said what the actual ages of death or the years that she researched were. Also not given was the level of significance, the alpha that was used for this problem. Nor did we have a p-value that was given for the t-test. She said that she did a two-sample t-test and a correlation r-test, but that's it. There was nothing that told about how she did it or what kinds of comparisons were made. What's more, the interpretation she had for the r-test was just wrong. She said that the table value was 0.37 and the calculator said 0.31, so she said this was significant. But the actual way you do an r-test is the exact opposite of that. For an r-test, you want the calculator to be bigger than the table. Hers wasn't, so actually her r-test would not have been significant. There was also one thing on that checklist that she didn't address at all, which was the problems or issues that she had with the project. And if you had none, you need to at least say that there were none, that everything went fine all the way along. So again, the woman that really did this did an excellent job with her project, but if she had turned in what I just went through, that would be a problem. So again, the summary you need to turn in is just a paragraph or two that addresses those points that I said. One of the things that needs to be included is a graph. Now, the example I did earlier, I actually made a graph in Excel and showed that. You can do that, but you could also just make a quick graph on like notebook paper, take a picture of it on your phone, and send it off. That would be fine too. Doesn't need to look beautiful. It does need to follow the rules of how good graphs work. You need to Either email me the summary or submit it through Canvas, and that will count as the summary for your project. Well, that would be again the last video for this class. I hope that things have been fairly useful for you this semester. It certainly has been a strange semester, but hopefully you did get some good stuff out of the course. I've enjoyed teaching you, and I do hope that things go well for all of you in the future.